Sometimes, right before a major quantum jump, life feels strange. Not chaotic, not entirely peaceful, but as if something is shifting under the surface in a way you can't quite name. The conversations around you feel a little hollow. The routines that once gave you comfort suddenly feel irrelevant. Even your ambitions, the ones you used to chase with so much energy, feel like they've lost their flavor, and this can be unsettling. It has been trained to believe that progress looks like constant activity, constant movement, constant doing. But in truth, this strange quiet you're feeling is one of the most important signals that your life is about to transform. It's not stagnation. It's not apathy. This is recalibration. Most people misinterpret these early signs of transformation as personal failure or depression. We live in a culture that worships productivity, where every moment must be optimized and every day must show measurable progress. When the familiar drive suddenly evaporates, when the goals that once excited us feel empty, our first instinct is to push harder, do more, fill the void with activity. But this is exactly the wrong approach. What you're experiencing is your consciousness preparing for a fundamental shift in reality. Think of it like a computer updating its operating system. During the update process, certain functions become temporarily unavailable. The screen might go dark, programs might stop responding, and for a while, it seems like nothing is working. But beneath the surface, millions of processes are reorganizing, upgrading, preparing for enhanced functionality. Your psyche is undergoing a similar upgrade right now. The conversations feel hollow because you're no longer vibrating at the frequency where those topics matter. The routines feel irrelevant because they were designed for the version of you that you're evolving beyond. Your ambitions have lost their flavor because your soul is calling you towards something far greater than what your previous self could even imagine. In quantum mechanics, before a particle shifts to a new state, it enters what's called a period of uncertainty. Physicists might describe it as a superposition, a moment when the particle holds multiple potentials at once, none yet collapsed into reality. This is not a pause. It's the most dynamic state imaginable. At this stage, every possible outcome exists simultaneously in what scientists call the quantum field. And you right now are in that same state. It's a liminal space, a doorway between timelines where the old version of you is dissolving and the new version is forming in a reality that already exists in the quantum field. The human mind, obsessed with linear progress, struggles to trust this. It wants to see evidence, results, steps. But the quantum doesn't play by those rules. In quantum physics, the observer effect shows us that consciousness itself influences reality. The very act of observing a quantum system causes it to collapse from multiple possibilities into a single outcome. Right now, you are both the observer and the observed. Your consciousness is preparing to collapse your superposition of potential selves into your next quantum reality. But first, you must learn to be comfortable existing in multiple states at once. This requires a fundamental shift in how you relate to uncertainty. Instead of seeing the unknown as threatening, you must begin to recognize it as pure creative potential. What you're feeling is the dismantling of the old vibrational blueprint. Think of your life as an intricate web of patterns, beliefs, and energetic signatures. For years, those patterns have held you in a certain frequency, which kept you anchored to a specific timeline. Every habit you've maintained, every belief you've held, every emotional response you've automated has contributed to this energetic web. This web has been your reality anchor, keeping you locked into familiar experiences, relationships, and opportunities. But when your higher self decides it's time to move, that web begins to loosen. Threads start snapping. Old energetic contracts expire. The beliefs that once felt so solid begin to feel questionable. The people who once felt like your tribe might suddenly feel like strangers. The work that once fulfilled you might feel meaningless. And because this all happens at the vibrational level, before it appears in the physical, the first thing you notice is the stillness, the emptiness, the absence of your old drive. This dismantling process is not random or chaotic. Your higher consciousness is systematically releasing every pattern that would prevent you from stepping into your next level of existence. It's like renovating a house while you're still living in it. Certain rooms become temporarily unusable, the familiar layout gets disrupted, and for a while, nothing feels quite right. But this temporary discomfort is the price of transformation, and this can feel like something is wrong, when in reality, it's the surest sign something is about to go profoundly right. Spiritually, many traditions describe this phase as the void. Mystics speak of it as the fertile darkness, the place where creation is seeded before it blooms into light. In Tibetan Buddhism, this space is called the bardo, the intermediate state between death and rebirth. Hindu philosophy describes it as the space between breaths, where infinite potential resides. Indigenous shamanic traditions recognize it as the place where vision quests begin, where the old self dies so the new self can be born. In the void, your soul is reorganizing itself to match the reality you are calling in. This is not empty space, though it may feel that way. This is the most fertile creative field in existence. Every great invention, every breakthrough, every moment of genius has emerged from this apparent nothingness. The void is where your consciousness downloads new possibilities from the quantum field. It's where your DNA receives upgrades that will allow you to perceive and create realities that were previously beyond your scope. The old tools you used to navigate life may no longer work here because they belong to the identity you are leaving behind. Your logical mind, your familiar coping strategies, your usual sources of motivation, all of these were calibrated for your previous frequency. Your job now is not to panic, but to breathe into the stillness and trust it. This requires tremendous courage, because everything in our conditioning tells us to fill the void, to stay busy, to avoid the discomfort of not knowing. But transformation demands that you learn to be comfortable in the space between who you were and who you're becoming. Like a caterpillar dissolving in the chrysalis, you must trust the process even when it feels like everything you once were is disappearing. The butterfly exists as pure potential in that dark, formless space before it emerges into the light. The silence is not empty. It is full of quantum information, reorganizing your reality in ways your conscious mind cannot yet see. Science supports this too. Studies on neuroplasticity show that the brain needs periods of downtime to rewire itself for new patterns. When you're stepping into a new frequency, your nervous system is adjusting. Your brain's predictive models are recalibrating, and your body is learning a new energetic baseline. This recalibration phase is essential because you can't carry the chaotic frequency of the old timeline into the stability of the new. You must release before you can receive. Think about how a computer processes major software updates. The screen goes blank, the familiar interface disappears, and for a moment everything seems frozen. But beneath that apparent stillness, millions of calculations are happening. Files are being reorganized, pathways are being rewritten, and the entire system is preparing to operate at a higher level. Your consciousness works the same way during quantum preparation. The silence you're experiencing isn't a malfunction or a sign that nothing is happening. It's your internal operating system upgrading itself to match the frequency of your desired reality. Imagine the moment before a great symphony begins. The lights dim, the audience grows silent, and the musicians take their places. That silence isn't wasted time. It's the preparation for something powerful. The conductor raises their baton, and in that pregnant pause, the entire hall holds its breath. Every musician is poised, every instrument is tuned, and the collective energy builds toward the first note. Without that moment of stillness, the symphony would begin in chaos rather than harmony. Your life operates on the same principle. The quiet phase before your quantum jump isn't a delay or a problem to be solved. It's the universe fine-tuning every element of your reality to ensure that, when movement begins, it flows with perfect orchestration. Or think of it like a bow being drawn before an arrow is released. The tension isn't a delay. It's the very thing that will propel you forward. The archer doesn't pull the bowstring back as punishment or resistance. They pull it back to store the potential energy that will carry the arrow to its target with precision and power. Right now, the universe is drawing you back. Not to hold you down, but to launch you into a trajectory you couldn't reach with sheer effort alone. The further back the bow is drawn, the greater the potential for forward momentum. This is why the most profound transformations often follow periods of apparent stagnation or even seeming regression. You're not moving backward. You're building the energetic momentum for a quantum leap that will surprise even you with its magnitude. Here's the key insight that changes everything. Most people misinterpret this phase and sabotage their jump. They panic at the stillness, mistake the void for a problem, and start scrambling to fill it with old habits and low-frequency distractions. They turn on the television to drown out the silence. They scroll through social media to avoid being alone with their thoughts. Or they throw themselves into busy work that keeps them from feeling depth of the transformation occurring within them. It's like interrupting a butterfly mid-metamorphosis and wondering why it never develops wings. The chrysalis stage looks like death from the outside, but it's actually the most creative phase of the entire process. But the more you resist the silence, the longer you stay suspended between timelines. Resistance creates energetic static that interferes with the quantum recalibration process. It's like trying to download a large file while simultaneously running programs that consume all your bandwidth. The download slows to a crawl, sometimes stopping entirely, because the system doesn't have the resources to complete the upgrade. The ones who make the leap are those who learn to lean into the quiet, to see it as proof of progress rather than absence of it. They understand that the most profound changes happen in the invisible realm before they manifest in physical reality. They treat the silence like a meditation retreat or a spiritual fast, recognizing it as a sacred time of inner transformation. If you can shift your perspective, if you can see the strange calm as the quantum loading screen for your next chapter, then you'll start to notice subtle signals that the field is rearranging itself around you. These signals are often so gentle that they're easily missed if you're looking for dramatic external changes. A random conversation that sparks a new insight you've never had before. An unexpected release of emotion that clears old trauma from your cellular memory. A sudden clarity about something you've been confused about for months, or even years. A book that falls off a shelf and opens to exactly the page you needed to read. A stranger who says precisely the words your soul needed to hear. A dream that provides the missing piece to a puzzle you've been trying to solve. These aren't coincidences. They are micro-adjustments in your frequency, lining you up with the new reality. They're like GPS recalculations, constantly updating your coordinates as you move closer to your destination. Each small synchronicity is evidence that your internal compass is sensing with the magnetic field of your desired timeline. The quantum field responds to these subtle shifts in your vibration by sending you increasingly clear signals that you're on the right path. So, if you're here feeling a little out of place, unsure of where you're going, but certain you can't go back, congratulations. You're in the exact vibrational space where transformation becomes inevitable. You're standing at the threshold between worlds, and that threshold is always marked by a period of apparent emptiness. It's the space between the inhale and the exhale, the pause between the lightning and the thunder, the moment of stillness before the wave breaks on the shore. And in the next moments we share, I'm going to show you how to not only survive this phase, but to use it as rocket fuel for your quantum jump. Because once you recognize the silence for what it really is, you'll stop resisting and start moving toward your next timeline with clarity, trust, and the magnetic pull of inevitability. The quantum loading screen isn't a punishment or a delay. It's your invitation to step into the most powerful version of yourself that's been waiting in the wings, ready to take center stage in the symphony of your transformed life. The quantum loading screen isn't your invitation to step into transformation. It's the moment you realize transformation has already begun, whether you consciously chose it or not. Most people expect their quantum jump to announce itself with cosmic fireworks or some unmistakable sign from the universe. More often, it begins with friction. Not the chaotic kind that throws your life into obvious turmoil, but subtle, disorienting moments where the things that used to fit you no longer feel quite right. Relationships that once felt comfortable now feel constricting. Work that once gave you purpose feels hollow. Even your inner dialogue starts to sound foreign, as if it's coming from a version of you that no longer exists. This is the frequency mismatch phase, the moment your soul is accelerating into a higher vibration, while parts of your life are still operating in the old one. In quantum terms, this is what's known as decoherence. When two systems, in this case your inner state and your outer reality, are no longer vibrating in harmony, the tension becomes impossible to ignore. And that tension is not a mistake. It's a signal that your current reality cannot sustain the energetic blueprint of where you're going. Think of it like trying to run the latest software on outdated hardware. The system will lag, glitch, and eventually crash. Not because something went wrong, but because an upgrade is required. That upgrade is your quantum jump. Spiritually, this is where many people start to question everything. Why does it feel like I'm falling apart when I'm supposed to be leveling up? The truth is, you're not falling apart. You're falling out of alignment with your old timeline. And that dissonance is the exact force that will propel you toward the new one. Imagine standing with one foot on each of two boats, drifting in opposite directions. Eventually, you will have to commit to one, and the one that matches your frequency will always feel like relief, even if it requires you to leave the familiar behind. Your consciousness is literally expanding beyond the boundaries of your current identity. Like a snake shedding its skin, the process feels uncomfortable because you're outgrowing the very structure that once defined you. The old patterns, beliefs, and ways of being that served your previous version no longer have the capacity to contain who you're becoming. This isn't a gradual process where you can negotiate with change or ease into it slowly. Quantum physics shows us that electrons don't gradually move between energy levels. They absorb energy until they reach a critical threshold, then instantly jump to the new orbital. Your transformation follows the same principle. You're accumulating energetic momentum until you reach the point where staying in your old reality becomes impossible. Here's where most people get trapped. The mind, uncomfortable with uncertainty, tries to cling to the old. It will tell you to fix what's breaking, to smooth over what's falling apart, to restore what's fading away. But in the quantum field, restoration of the old is a step backwards. What feels like breakdown is actually the shedding of density. Old beliefs, patterns, and identities that can't travel with you to your new timeline. If you rush to patch them back together, you delay the jump. If you allow them to dissolve, you accelerate it. Physics gives us a metaphor here. When an electron jumps to a higher orbital, it must absorb a precise amount of energy. No more, no less. Once it reaches that threshold, it instantly transitions to the new state. There's no in between. Similarly, your quantum jump happens the moment your frequency matches the reality you're moving into. Not when you think you're ready, not when circumstances align perfectly, but when your vibrational signature becomes an exact match for your desired timeline. The resistance you feel isn't evidence that you're going in the wrong direction. It's evidence that you're moving from a lower frequency state to a higher one, and your nervous system is recalibrating to handle the increased energy flow. Think of it like altitude sickness when climbing a mountain. The discomfort isn't a sign you should go back down. It's your body adapting to a thinner atmosphere at a higher elevation. The key to navigating this phase is understanding that you're currently existing in two realities simultaneously. Part of you is still anchored in the old timeline, maintaining familiar routines and relationships. But another part of you has already begun operating from your future self's frequency. This creates what quantum physicists call superposition, where multiple states exist at the same time until observation collapses them into a single reality. In your case, you're the observer who will ultimately collapse the wave function, with choosing which version of yourself to embody consistently. Every time you choose to respond from your elevated frequency, instead of your old patterns, you strengthen the bridge to your new timeline. Every time you revert to familiar reactions and behaviors, you reinforce the connection to your old reality. The frequency mismatch phase is actually your consciousness testing which reality feels more authentic. Your soul is conducting a live experiment, sampling different vibrational states to determine which one aligns with your true nature. The discomfort you feel is simply the contrast between frequencies, like tuning a radio between stations. Once you find the clear signal of your new timeline, the static of the old one becomes irrelevant. The friction isn't a problem to solve. It's information to integrate. It's showing you exactly what needs to shift for your outer reality to match your inner transformation. Instead of fighting the mismatch, learn to read it like a GPS system recalculating your route. The tension points are highlighting the areas where your old identity is incompatible with your new destination. Your job isn't to eliminate the discomfort, but to use it as a compass pointing toward your next level of authenticity. Right before a quantum jump, you might notice that your emotional world feels amplified, as if someone turned the volume up on every feeling you have. One moment you're buzzing with excitement, certain that something magnificent is about to unfold. The next, you're drowning in doubt, wondering if you've been deluding yourself this entire time. This emotional roller coaster isn't a sign that you're losing your mind or moving backward in your transformation. It's actually one of the most reliable indicators that you're approaching the event horizon of your quantum leap. Think of it like this: when a radio is searching for a clear signal, it cycles through static fragments of different stations and bursts of clarity before finally locking onto the frequency you want. Your consciousness is doing the same thing right now, scanning through different vibrational states as it searches for the exact frequency of your new reality. In quantum physics, there's a phenomenon called resonance amplification that occurs just before an electron makes its orbital jump. The electron begins oscillating more intensely between energy states, almost as if it's testing different levels before committing to the leap. Your emotional and mental state is exhibiting the same pattern right now. The intensity you're feeling isn't random chaos. It's your consciousness fine-tuning itself to match the precise vibrational signature of your desired timeline. Every surge of excitement is your system recognizing and aligning with glimpses of your new reality. Every wave of doubt is your old programming, making one final attempt to keep you locked in familiar territory. The key is understanding that both experiences are necessary components of the jumping process. When you feel that rush of certainty, that moment when everything clicks, and you know beyond doubt that your transformation is real, you're actually experiencing a preview of your post-jump state. Your consciousness is briefly syncing with the frequency of who you're becoming, giving you a taste of the coherence that will soon be your permanent reality. But then the doubt crashes in, and suddenly you're questioning everything again. This isn't evidence that you've lost your connection, or that the previous moment of clarity was false. It's your old identity making one last desperate attempt to pull you back into the familiar patterns of limitation and struggle. Here's what most people don't realize: the intensity of the doubt is directly proportional to the magnitude of the shift you're about to make. The bigger the quantum leap, the more dramatic the contrast between your old and new frequencies will feel. Your system is essentially experiencing future shock, trying to process the gap between where you've been and where you're going. The mistake most people make during this phase is trying to stabilize the emotional intensity through external action. They start frantically journaling, doing extra meditation sessions, or seeking validation from others about whether their transformation is real. But here's the paradox. The more you try to control or analyze the amplification, the longer this phase tends to last. The intensity isn't something to be managed. It's something to be witnessed. Think of yourself as a tuning fork that's been struck. The vibrations need to move through you completely before you can settle into your new resonant frequency. If you try to dampen the vibrations prematurely, you interrupt the natural calibration process. Instead, practice what I call conscious witnessing. When the excitement hits, feel it fully without immediately trying to figure out what it means or what you should do about it. When the doubt arises, acknowledge it without letting it derail your entire sense of progress. Both states are temporary visitors in your consciousness, not permanent residents. The excitement is showing you glimpses of your destination. The doubt is clearing out the last vestiges of programming that won't be compatible with where you're going. Neither one requires you to take dramatic action or make major decisions. Your job during this phase is simply to remain present and trust that your system knows exactly how to navigate this transition. Here's something fascinating that happens right before the actual quantum jump. The emotional intensity often stops abruptly. After days, weeks, or even months of feeling like you're on an emotional roller coaster, you suddenly wake up one morning and feel calm. Not the forced calm of trying to manage your emotions, but a natural, effortless peace that seems to arise from nowhere. This is what quantum physicists call the collapse point, the moment when all the oscillating possibilities collapse into a single, stable reality. Your consciousness has finished its scanning process and locked onto the frequency of your new timeline. The amplification was the search, the calm is the arrival. Many people miss their quantum jump entirely because they expect it to feel dramatic or earth-shattering. They're waiting for lightning bolts and mystical experiences, but the actual moment of transition often feels surprisingly natural. It's like finally finding the radio station you were looking for. The static disappears, and suddenly you're hearing clear music. The clarity doesn't announce itself with fanfare, it simply is. This is why it's so important not to dismiss the quiet moments that follow intense amplification periods. That sense of nothing happening might actually be everything happening. Your new frequency has stabilized, and now your external reality is beginning the process of reorganizing itself to match. The changes might be subtle at first, a different quality to your interactions, opportunities appearing with unusual synchronicity, or simply a new sense of ease in situations that used to trigger stress. Trust these quiet indicators as much as you would trust dramatic ones. Your quantum jump doesn't need to validate itself through intensity. It validates itself through the effortless alignment that becomes your new normal. The amplification phase is temporary, but the coherence that follows is permanent. So if you're currently in the thick of emotional intensity, wondering when this roller coaster will end, know that every surge and every crash is serving the process of your transformation. You're not broken. You're not going backward, and you're not imagining things. You're simply in the final calibration phase before your consciousness locks into the frequency that will become your new reality. The fact that you're even asking yourself how to respond to this amplification is proof that you're approaching the moment when asking becomes unnecessary, because you'll simply know. The emotional roller coaster you're experiencing isn't a sign that something is wrong with you. It's actually your internal navigation system recalibrating to guide you to the most significant transformation of your life. When you understand emotions as energy signatures rather than personal failings, everything changes about how you move through this quantum transition. Your emotions are literally the chemical messengers announcing that your reality is reorganizing itself at the cellular level. Every surge of excitement followed by a crash of doubt represents your nervous system processing frequencies it has never encountered before. Think of it like this: your brain has been running on a specific operating system for years, maybe decades. Suddenly, it's receiving signals from a completely different frequency band, and your neurochemistry is scrambling to interpret these new data streams. The dopamine hits of possibility clash with the cortisol spikes of uncertainty, because your body doesn't yet have established pathways for this new reality. This is why the emotional intensity feels so overwhelming during quantum preparation periods. Your endocrine system is literally rewiring itself to match the vibrational signature of your emerging timeline. The old emotional patterns serve the old reality perfectly, but they're incompatible with where you're headed. So your body creates this transitional state where both systems operate simultaneously until the new one becomes dominant. This process can't be rushed or forced, but it can be supported through conscious awareness and strategic non-resistance. In quantum mechanics, superposition describes particles existing in multiple states simultaneously until observation collapses them into a single reality. Your emotional experience during transformation mirrors this phenomenon exactly. You're literally existing in multiple timeline possibilities at once, and your emotions are the feedback system showing you which reality you're tuned into moment by moment. When you feel that surge of absolute, knowing that everything is aligning perfectly, you're experiencing the frequency of your desired timeline. When doubt crashes in 30 seconds later, you're briefly dropping back into the vibrational signature of your old reality. This isn't inconsistency or weakness. It's the natural oscillation that occurs before timeline collapse. The key insight is that the stronger these oscillations become, the closer you are to the moment when one reality becomes permanent. It's like a radio searching for a clear signal. The static gets more intense right before it locks onto the frequency. Your job isn't to stop the oscillation, but to recognize it as evidence that the quantum field is reorganizing around your new identity. Each swing between hope and fear is actually your consciousness testing the structural integrity of both timelines. The old reality is becoming increasingly unstable under the pressure of your expanding awareness, while the new timeline grows stronger with each moment of alignment. Eventually, the old frequency simply can't maintain coherence with who you're becoming, and it dissolves naturally. Understanding emotions as energy signatures, rather than personal judgments, completely transforms your relationship with this transition period. Instead of asking, "Why do I feel so unstable?" you start asking, "What is this emotion telling me about my current frequency?" Fear often signals that you're approaching the edge of your known reality, which is exactly where quantum jumps occur. Excitement indicates alignment with your emerging timeline, while doubt usually means you've temporarily slipped back into old thought patterns. Anger might reveal outdated beliefs being challenged, while sadness often accompanies the release of identity structures that no longer serve you. None of these emotions are problems to be solved, they're information to be decoded. When you stop resisting the emotional fluctuations and start reading them as navigational data, you develop what I call quantum emotional intelligence. This is the ability to remain centered in your observer consciousness, while emotions move through your system like weather patterns. You learn to feel everything fully without being destabilized by temporary energetic states. This skill becomes invaluable because it allows you to maintain your vibrational trajectory, even when your emotional landscape is shifting dramatically. The airplane turbulence analogy becomes crucial here, because most people's instinct is to grip tighter when they feel emotional intensity. But just as turbulence means the aircraft is successfully navigating different atmospheric layers, emotional upheaval means you're successfully transitioning between dimensional frequencies. The mistake is interpreting the intensity as evidence that something is going wrong, when it's actually proof that something is going very right. Learning to ride these emotional currents requires developing what spiritual traditions call witness consciousness, the part of you that can observe your experience without being consumed by it. This doesn't mean becoming emotionally numb or detached. It means maintaining your center while allowing the full spectrum of transformation energies to move through your system. When you master this skill, you discover that emotions actually accelerate your quantum jump rather than hindering it. Each feeling becomes a wave that carries you closer to your new timeline instead of a storm that threatens to pull you under. The practice involves breathing through intensity, staying present with whatever arises, and trusting that your emotional guidance system is perfectly designed to navigate this transition. As you approach the actual moment of quantum jumping, the emotional oscillations often reach their peak intensity. This is your consciousness performing final diagnostics on both timelines before committing to the new reality. Every fear, doubt, and limiting belief gets one last chance to surface and be consciously released or integrated. This isn't the universe testing you. It's your own higher wisdom, ensuring that you're fully prepared for the frequency shift. The emotions that arise during this phase are often connected to your deepest identity structures and core beliefs about what's possible for you. When these surface, remember that you're not being shown what's wrong with you. You're being shown what's ready to be transformed. The intensity of the emotion often correlates with the significance of the belief system that's dissolving. Major identity shifts require major energetic releases, which naturally create major emotional experiences. Your job is to feel it all without making it mean anything about your worthiness or readiness for transformation. Trust that your emotional guidance system knows exactly what it's doing, even when the process feels chaotic or overwhelming. This final emotional recalibration is actually the last step before your new reality becomes your stable, permanent experience. Most people imagine the final test before a quantum leap, as if the universe were a stern teacher standing at the front of the class, with a red pen, waiting to mark their paper. But the truth is far more intimate and far more empowering. This isn't the universe deciding whether you're worthy. It's your own subconscious running its final diagnostic, surfacing the last fragments of your old identity, so you can choose consciously to let them go. You might find yourself suddenly facing the same kind of challenges you thought you'd already outgrown. A conversation that pushes your buttons in exactly the same way an old relationship did. A money situation that triggers the same scarcity, panic you felt years ago, or a wave of self-doubt that sounds eerily familiar. These moments are not punishments. They're mirrors reflecting back the frequency you used to inhabit, so you can decide, once and for all, whether you still want to live there. From a neuroscience perspective, your brain loves efficiency. It will always reach for the most well-worn pathways first. The familiar responses, beliefs, and behaviors you've rehearsed thousands of times become your brain's default operating system. Even when you've consciously decided to change, your neural networks still carry the blueprints of who you used to be. Think of it like muscle memory for consciousness. Your brain has spent years perfecting the art of being your old self, creating intricate webs of associations, triggers, and automatic responses. When transformation begins, these neural highways don't simply disappear overnight. Instead, they surface one final time, like a computer running a diagnostic check before installing new software. This is why the challenges that appeared just before your quantum leap feel so precisely calibrated to your old wounds. Your subconscious isn't trying to sabotage you. It's offering you the ultimate opportunity to demonstrate that you've truly outgrown these patterns. Each trigger is essentially asking, are you still this person, or have you really become someone new? And the beauty of this process is that you don't have to fight these old patterns or force them away. You simply need to respond from your new frequency instead of your old programming. When that familiar anxiety arises, instead of spiraling into panic, you breathe and center yourself. When someone tries to push your buttons, instead of reacting defensively, you respond with curiosity or compassion. When scarcity thoughts surface, instead of contracting in fear, you expand into trust and abundance. Each time you choose your new response over your old reaction, you're literally rewiring your brain in real time. From a quantum perspective, what's happening during this final diagnostic is even more profound. The field around you is essentially running a compatibility check. Your new timeline exists at a specific vibrational frequency, and the quantum field needs to ensure you can maintain that frequency under pressure. It's like a pilot's final flight simulation before being cleared for takeoff. The scenarios that appear aren't random. They're specifically designed to activate whatever old frequencies still have hooks in your energy field. A relationship conflict might surface to test whether you've truly released the need to be right. A financial challenge might appear to see if you've genuinely shifted from scarcity to abundance consciousness. A health scare might emerge to check whether you've moved from victim to creator mentality. These aren't cosmic punishments or signs that you're doing something wrong. They're the universe's way of ensuring that when you land in your new timeline, you won't immediately get pulled back to your old one by unresolved vibrational anchors. The key is recognizing these situations for what they are. Graduation ceremonies, not detention. Your old self would have seen these challenges as proof that nothing was working. Your new self recognizes them as confirmation that everything is working perfectly. The very fact that these patterns are surfacing means they're ready to be released. The quantum field is giving you the opportunity to cut the final energetic cords that could pull you backward. The most powerful aspect of this final diagnostic is that it's not about perfection, it's about demonstration. You don't need to handle every challenge flawlessly or never feel triggered again. You simply need to show that your default response has shifted. When you do get triggered, you recover faster. When old fears arise, you don't let them drive your decisions. When familiar patterns try to reassert themselves, you recognize them as visitors, not residents. This is the difference between someone who has intellectually learned new concepts, someone who has genuinely embodied a new identity. The person who is truly transformed doesn't avoid challenges. They meet them from a completely different energetic foundation. Their nervous system has recalibrated to a new baseline of peace. Their emotional range has expanded to include more resilience and compassion. Their mental patterns have rewired to default to possibility rather than limitation. When the final diagnostic runs, these new patterns prove themselves under real, world conditions. It's like the difference between knowing how to drive in theory and actually navigating rush hour traffic. The challenges that appear before your quantum leap are your rush hour traffic. They're testing whether your new identity can handle the complexity and intensity of real life. And here's the beautiful part. By the time these tests appear, you're already equipped to pass them. The very fact that you're being presented with these opportunities means you've developed the capacity to meet them successfully. Your consciousness wouldn't generate scenarios you weren't ready to handle. The universe doesn't set you up to fail. It only presents you with challenges that reveal how much you've already grown. So when these familiar patterns surface, don't panic. Don't assume you've regressed or that your transformation wasn't real. Instead, take a deep breath and recognize the moment for what it is, your final opportunity to prove to yourself that you've truly become someone new. Respond from your cultivated frequency, not your historical programming. Choose love over fear, expansion over contraction, trust over doubt. Each conscious choice you make in these moments is literally collapsing the old probability waves and anchoring you deeper into your new timeline. This is how quantum leaps actually happen, not through dramatic external changes, but through quiet, internal demonstrations of who you've become. The external world will shift to match your new frequency, but first, you must prove that frequency is genuine and stable. The final diagnostic ensures that when your new reality manifests, you'll be vibrationally prepared to receive it and energetically equipped to maintain it. When you're on the brink of a quantum jump, the universe presents you with what I call simulator runs. These are the final opportunities to demonstrate that your frequency shift is real, stable, and permanent. Just like pilots train in flight simulators to handle turbulence before they encounter it at 30,000 feet. Your consciousness creates scenarios that test your new vibrational signature under pressure. The neural pathways you've been rewiring through months or years of inner work are still firing their old signals, desperately hoping you'll give them one last confirmation so they can remain your default programming. These pathways represent your historical identity, the version of you that reacted from scarcity, fear, or limitation. They've been your survival mechanism for so long that they genuinely believe they're protecting you by trying to pull you back into familiar patterns. But here's what most people don't understand about neural rewiring. It doesn't happen through force or willpower. You can't think your way into new patterns or muscle your way past old triggers. The only way to genuinely rewire these pathways is through demonstration. By consistently behaving as the new version of yourself, even when the old triggers are positioned directly in front of you. Every single time you choose the higher frequency response over the historically automatic one, you send an electrical signal down a new neural pathway while simultaneously weakening the old one. In neuroscience terms, this is called synaptic pruning, where unused neural connections literally dissolve while frequently used ones strengthen and become your new default. In quantum mechanics terms, this represents the collapse of an old probability wave. Until you make that new choice, both versions of you exist simultaneously in what physicists call superposition. Picture this. There's the version of you that would react from past conditioning, and the version that responds from your cultivated alignment. Both exist as potential realities until the moment you act. When you choose to respond from your upgraded frequency, you collapse the wave function of your old self and activate the timeline where your new identity is the only signal broadcasting into the quantum field. This is why the challenges that surface right before a major shift feel so intensely charged. They're not random difficulties or signs that you're moving backward. They represent the final superposition between who you were and who you're becoming. The emotional intensity you feel during these moments is actually the friction between two different vibrational frequencies trying to occupy the same space. Your old identity is making its last stand while your new one is trying to fully emerge. Think of it like tuning a radio between two stations. For a moment, you hear both frequencies creating static until you lock onto the clear signal of one or the other. These simulator runs are your opportunity to lock onto your new frequency permanently. From a spiritual perspective, this stage is less of a test and more of a ceremonial crossing. It's the moment you stand at the threshold between timelines, holding the energetic key to your new reality. The door to your quantum jump doesn't require you to be perfect or to never feel triggered again. It simply asks that you respond from the frequency you've been cultivating rather than the one you're trying to leave behind. If you meet scarcity with gratitude instead of panic, if you respond to anger with compassion instead of defensiveness, if you greet doubt with unwavering presence instead of spiraling into fear, you're not just symbolically ready for your new timeline, you're vibrationally locked into it. The quantum field doesn't need to approve you or judge whether you're worthy. It simply mirrors back the frequency you're consistently embodying. In this moment, being is everything, and doing becomes secondary. Your new reality doesn't require you to achieve anything more or fix anything else. It requires you to inhabit the identity you've been building through all your inner work. When you respond to old triggers from your new frequency, you're sending a clear message to the universe that this upgraded version of you is now your permanent residence, not just a temporary visit. Here's where many people derail their quantum jump. Right at the finish line, they misinterpret these final challenges as evidence they're going backward. They think, if I'm still attracting these situations, I must be failing at transformation. If I were really changing, these problems wouldn't be showing up anymore. But this interpretation reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of how energy clearing works. The reality is that the very appearance of these scenarios means you've shifted enough vibrationally for them to be flushed out of your energetic field. You cannot clear what you haven't yet outgrown. The fact that you're now aware of these patterns, that you can observe them objectively instead of being unconsciously controlled by them, and that you're asking yourself how to respond differently, is the strongest possible signal that you're almost at your quantum breakthrough. These situations aren't showing up because you're stuck in old energy. They're surfacing because you've elevated enough for your consciousness to recognize them as foreign to your new frequency. It's like cleaning out a house you're about to sell. All the old items you've accumulated over the years need to be sorted through and either kept or released. The appearance of the clutter doesn't mean the house isn't ready for new owners. It means you're finally at the stage where you can see what needs to go. Your consciousness is doing the same thing with old patterns, beliefs, and emotional reactions that no longer match your upgraded identity. The simulator runs give you the chance to consciously choose which patterns you're taking with you into your new timeline and which ones you're leaving behind forever. When you pass these tests by responding from your new frequency instead of your old programming, you're not just imagining your transformed reality. You're living it in real time, proving to yourself and the universe that your quantum jump is complete. So if right now you're experiencing tension, setbacks, or the resurfacing of old triggers, recognize this as confirmation that your breakthrough is imminent, not evidence that it's been delayed. Here's what Hollywood never tells you about quantum leaps. They don't arrive with orchestras playing and confetti falling from the sky. The most profound transformations in human consciousness happen in the quiet spaces between one breath and the next. You wake up one Tuesday morning, and the anxiety that has been your constant companion for months is simply gone. Not diminished, not managed, not coped with, gone. The situation that kept you awake at night scrolling through worst-case scenarios now feels as relevant as last year's weather forecast. Your nervous system, which used to spike at the mere thought of certain conversations or circumstances, now responds with the calm neutrality of someone observing clouds drift across the sky. This is the nature of authentic quantum change. It doesn't announce itself with drama, because drama belongs to the old timeline you've left behind. Your previous reality was built on resistance, effort, and the constant need to prove something to yourself or others. Your new reality operates on a completely different frequency, one of natural flow, effortless alignment, and quiet confidence that needs no external validation. The mind, conditioned to expect struggle and breakthrough moments, often misses these subtle arrivals entirely. It keeps scanning for the fireworks while the real transformation is happening in the background, rewiring your entire operating system so smoothly that it feels like you've always been this way. This is precisely why so many people doubt their progress or assume their quantum jump hasn't happened yet. They're looking for the wrong signals. To understand why quantum leaps feel so natural once they occur, we need to examine what's actually happening at the deepest levels of reality. In quantum physics, when an electron absorbs enough energy to jump to a higher orbital, the transition is instantaneous. There's no gradual movement, no visible journey from one energy level to another. One moment the electron exists in its current state, the next moment it has completely reorganized itself around a new energetic configuration. This is the exact mechanism of consciousness transformation. Your awareness doesn't slowly climb from one perspective to another like a hiker ascending a mountain. Instead, it accumulates enough coherent energy through alignment, intention, and sustained frequency until it reaches a critical threshold. At that threshold point, your entire perceptual framework reorganizes itself instantaneously around a new center of gravity. The person you were yesterday, with all their fears, limitations, and reactive patterns, doesn't gradually evolve into your new self. They are completely replaced by a version of you operating from an entirely different energetic foundation. This is why the change feels so complete and natural. You're not trying to maintain new habits or force yourself to think differently. You're literally a different person, with different neural pathways, different emotional responses, and different default assumptions about what's possible. From a neurological standpoint, this process represents the dissolution of old neural networks and the simultaneous activation of dormant potentials that were always present, but never accessed. Your brain doesn't slowly rewire itself over time during a quantum leap. Instead, it experiences what neuroscientists call sudden reorganization. Entire networks of neurons fire together in new configurations, creating instant access to capabilities and perspectives that seem to appear out of nowhere. This is why people often report feeling like they've remembered something they always knew, rather than learned something new. The quantum jump doesn't add information to your consciousness. It removes the interference patterns that were blocking your access to your full potential. The most dangerous moment in any quantum transformation is not during the preparation phase or the leap itself. It's in the integration phase, when your new reality has stabilized, but feels so natural that your mind begins to question whether anything significant actually happened. This is where most people sabotage their own breakthrough. Because the change feels effortless and organic, the ego interprets this as evidence that nothing really changed, or that the transformation wasn't as profound as expected. The ego is addicted to drama, effort, and the story of overcoming obstacles. When transformation arrives quietly and integrates seamlessly, the ego has nothing to grab onto, no narrative of struggle and triumph to reinforce its importance. So it begins to create doubt, to poke at the new reality, testing whether it's real enough or dramatic enough to count as genuine change. This is the critical moment where you must resist the temptation to manufacture drama or create problems, just to feel like something is happening. Your new timeline operates on trust, flow, and allowing rather than forcing, proving, and controlling. The moment you start trying to test your new reality or create evidence of your transformation, you're operating from the old frequency of doubt and need for external validation. Instead, this is the time to simply live as your new self without commentary or analysis. Make decisions from your new center of gravity. Respond to challenges from your new emotional baseline. Navigate relationships from your new understanding of boundaries and self-worth. Every choice you make from this new frequency reinforces and stabilizes your quantum jump. Every moment, you trust the naturalness of your transformation rather than questioning it. You anchor yourself more deeply in your new timeline. The integration phase is not about proving your change to others or even to yourself. It's about allowing your new reality to unfold organically, while you focus on being rather than becoming. From a spiritual perspective, the quiet nature of quantum transformation reveals something profound about the nature of authentic power. True power doesn't need to announce itself or prove its existence through external displays. It simply is, radiating its influence through presence rather than performance. When your quantum leap arrives without fanfare, it's actually the universe's confirmation that you've achieved something most people never reach: complete alignment between your inner frequency and your outer expression. There's no gap between who you are and who you're trying to become, because the becoming is complete. This creates what mystics throughout history have called the peace that surpasses understanding, a deep, unshakable knowing that you're exactly where you need to be, doing exactly what you came here to do. Your nervous system, which spent years in fight or flight mode trying to bridge the gap between your current reality and your desired reality, finally relaxes into a state of coherent calm. This is why many people report feeling almost eerily peaceful after a quantum jump. The constant background tension of being out of alignment with your authentic self simply dissolves. You stop looking over your shoulder for problems or scanning the future for threats, because you're no longer operating from a frequency of lack or fear. Your new timeline is built on abundance, trust, and the deep knowing that you're supported by the same intelligence that orchestrates the movement of planets and the growth of flowers. This spiritual maturity often manifests as a decreased need for external validation or dramatic experiences. You're no longer trying to prove your worth to the universe, because you've remembered that you are an expression of the universe itself. The seeking stops because the finding is complete, and paradoxically, it's often at this point of complete inner fulfillment that your external world begins to reflect your transformation in ways that would have seemed miraculous from your old perspective. Opportunities appear effortlessly, relationships align naturally, and resources toward you, not because you're chasing them, but because you've become a vibrational match for them. This is the true magic of quantum transformation, not the dramatic moment of change, but the quiet revolution of living as your authentic self in a reality that finally matches your frequency. So if you're experiencing this peaceful integration, this natural embodiment of your new self, don't let your mind convince you that nothing significant has happened. You've accomplished what most people spend lifetimes seeking. You've successfully jumped timelines and landed in a reality where being yourself is not only enough, it's everything. The danger here is the temptation to poke the field, to go back to overdoing, over-visualizing, or second, guessing because you think manifestation always has to feel dramatic. But in truth, drama belongs to the old timeline. The new one is about flow. It's about trusting that just because the jump felt quiet, it doesn't mean it was small. In fact, the quiet shifts are often the most permanent because they happen at the identity level. Not just in your circumstances, but in who you are being. Most people expect quantum leaps to feel like movie moments, sudden flashes of insight, dramatic life changes, or overwhelming emotional breakthroughs. This expectation comes from our conditioning around transformation. We've been taught that real change must be visible, measurable, and intense. But quantum physics tells us something different. When an electron jumps from one orbital to another, there's no gradual movement, no visible transition. One moment it's in one position, the next it's in another, and the space between doesn't exist. Your consciousness works the same way. The most profound shifts happen in the spaces between thoughts, in the quiet moments when you're not trying to force anything. These subtle transformations bypass the mind's resistance entirely because they don't trigger the alarm systems that dramatic change usually activates. Your nervous system accepts quiet change more readily than chaotic upheaval. This is why people who successfully maintain quantum leaps often describe the experience as anticlimactic. They expected fireworks but got gentle morning light instead. The mind interprets this gentleness as evidence that nothing significant happened. This is where many people sabotage their own progress. They go back to old manifestation techniques, trying to recreate the intensity they think they need. But this is like trying to make an electron jump backwards because you didn't hear it move the first time. This is also the moment to lean into embodiment. Instead of asking, "Did it work?" you start asking, "How do I live fully as this version of me?" This shift in questioning represents a fundamental change in your relationship with reality. The old you is always seeking, always trying to get somewhere else. The new you recognizes that you've already arrived, and now the question becomes about full expression, rather than acquisition. Every choice you make from here reinforces the reality you've jumped into. Every action is now an expression of alignment, rather than a desperate attempt to create change. This is the difference between manifestation and embodiment. Manifestation implies that what you want is separate from you and needs to be attracted or created. Embodiment recognizes that you and your desired reality are already one unified field. When you embody your new identity, you're not trying to convince the universe of anything. You're simply being yourself, and the universe responds by reflecting that coherence back to you. Think of it like tuning a radio. When you're perfectly dialed into a frequency, you don't have to strain to hear the music. It flows clearly and effortlessly. But if you keep adjusting the dial because you're not sure if you're on the right station, you create static. Your new reality is the clear signal. Old manifestation habits are the static, creating adjustments. And that's when the quantum field responds with even greater coherence, weaving new possibilities into your life without effort on your part. So, if you've been expecting your leap to feel like an explosion, pay attention to the subtle shifts, the quiet mornings where you feel lighter, the conversations that flow without tension, the sudden clarity about decisions that used to paralyze you. These are the hallmarks of arrival. Your nervous system feels calmer, even when facing challenges that used to trigger you. You find yourself naturally making choices that align with your values without having to force yourself. People respond to you differently, often in ways they can't explain. Opportunities appear without you having to chase them. Solutions to old problems become obvious. You stop feeling the need to explain or justify your decisions to others. There's a quality of rightness to your days that doesn't depend on external circumstances. You might notice that you no longer feel compelled to consume endless content about manifestation or personal development. This isn't because you've given up on growth, but because you've shifted from learning mode to living mode. The information you used to seek externally is now being generated from within. You're already in the new reality. Now, your only job is to keep living there. This requires a different kind of discipline than what got you here. Instead of the discipline of doing, you need the discipline of being. Instead of forcing action, you need to practice allowing. Instead of controlling outcomes, you need to trust the process. Here's the truth. If you've made it this far in this journey with me today, it's not random. You're hearing this message because you've already been resonating with a higher timeline. You've already been tuning into the frequency of the version of you that has what you've been asking for. The fact that these concepts make sense to you, that they feel familiar rather than foreign, is evidence that you're already operating from an expanded state of consciousness. Your willingness to consider that transformation can be subtle rather than dramatic shows that you've moved beyond the ego's need for spectacle. This isn't about getting there anymore. You are there. Now it's about stabilizing, integrating, and expanding. In quantum terms, the leap you've made is only the beginning. The quantum field responds most powerfully not to desire, but to coherence. And you've just proven to yourself that you can hold that coherence long enough to collapse an entirely new reality. The next step is to make this frequency your home. That means no more slipping back into the old patterns when life gets quiet. It means no more testing the universe to see if it's still working. It's about anchoring yourself so deeply in this new identity that it becomes unshakable. Remember, you're not here to force your life into shape. You're here to align with the reality that already holds everything you've ever wanted, and then watch it unfold with a naturalness that feels almost effortless. That's the beauty of living in harmony with the quantum field.